What does it mean to be creative?
When I choose to be a moderator, it's my goal to make the focus on the celebrity and their relationship to the fans.
To think outside the box.
He said, well, you can't be all things to all people or something to that effect. You can't appeal to everybody. And I said, why the hell not?
We sit down with artists, filmmakers, comedians, and performers of all genres to ask them 8 simple questions on what makes them tick and what can we learn from their quest for creativity. It's time for your Cre8tivity podcast.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Dylan, your Cre8tivity podcast. We are at the... Excuse me.
You're doing great, Dylan.
Thank you.
Yeah, keep it up. That one wasn't no need for a take two. This is fine.
That wasn't horrible. I forget to breathe, and then when I breathe, I stop talking.
Did you just say you forget to breathe?
Yeah.
God, really?
I get nervous doing this.
So you forget to breathe. Hey, listen, calm down, man. You have nothing to be nervous about.
I know.
Okay? I'm a friend of yours. We've known
True.
each other. There's nothing disastrous that's going to happen. Take a breath. You're about to host a podcast, Your Cre8tivity, with a T and an 8 in there for some reason. It's kind of redundant. This is a silly podcast. There's no reason to be nervous. Let your heart rate slow. Take a breath. Let me see you take a breath.
In through my nose?
Uh-huh. Okay, how you feeling?
Better.
All right.
Thank you.
Continue with the intro, Dylan.
Welcome back, everybody. We are on the road again. We are at the Golden Spike Comedy Festival in downtown Salt Lake City.
How is that the road?
Well, when we're not in the studio, we're on the road.
I see.
That's how I refer to it
Okay.
when we do remotes.
Cool. Well, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to step on what you were doing there.
No,
we are on the road. We're a good 11 minutes away from the studio, aren't we?
Maybe depending on the traffic.
Depending on okay, yeah. Well, either way, I think you can call it the road. I think even in midday when there's no traffic and you zip down here at 80 miles an hour and you get here in 7 minutes, I'm on board with calling this broadcast from the road.
All right. We'll stick with it then.
Okay.
I'll keep on referring it to that. That voice you're hearing, everybody, is the one and only Andy Gold.
Thank you.
The Utah-raised, now LA-based comedian. How are you, Andy?
I'm fine. I'm in town for the Golden Spike Comedy Festival. I did a couple of spots last night. Dylan, the host of the Your Cre8tivity podcast, the prestigious Your Cre8tivity podcast, reached out to me and asked if I wanted to do it. So I set aside some time, and I've just been giddy about it all week, Dylan. I can't tell you how excited I am to be on your podcast, man.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it.
I haven't listened to an episode yet, but I know I'm a fan of yours.
Well, this is I believe our 12th episode.
Do you mind if, I know you told me you ask me 8 questions. Do you mind if I ask you any questions?
Go
and
for
make
it.
a kind of conversation?
Yeah, it's a very casual.
Okay, good. What made you want to do a podcast?
Well, before this podcast, I was part of a movie podcast that kind of imploded on the network, as some podcasts do sometime.
Uh-huh.
And when that fell apart, I was doing a blog at the same time.
A blog?
Yeah.
Okay.
Interviewing people with 8 questions.
Ah.
So I just kind of...
And then you just transitioned the blog into the podcast medium.
Right.
I see. Did you ever have the thought that I, Dylan Mazziotti, need to be heard?
Depends. Who you ask, I guess.
I'm asking you.
Me?
Did you ever? Were you ever sitting alone or with people wherever, and you just thought, what I have to say is too good. I can't keep it to myself. I need to go out and share it with the world. The thoughts of D-Maz are so good that I need to share them.
Well, this podcast is guest based, so I
But they're your questions.
But I think there are questions that, some people would wonder about these guests.
So what motivated you wasn't that you're so charming and brilliant that you need to be heard, but that you thought you could have interesting guests on and share the perspectives of your interesting guests with the people. And you chose me?
Yeah.
Dylan, I'm flattered.
Well, you've been through a lot, and your
Oh my
comedy.
God, are you going to want to talk about the heroin thing?
No.
It's fine, we can. But just know every podcast person has talked to me about it. But we can totally talk about it. That's what I get for I bring it on myself. Like, I talk about it a lot in the act. So it's very unfair of me to attack you like that.
I'm used to you attacking me if I can.
Come on, dude. When have I attacked you?
I know you've been joking every time you did it, but
But I don't know. Have I been abusive?
No.
Would you say? Is that too strong? Okay, good.
like when I was sitting in on one of your podcasts and I was eating my Greek thing, and
You were eating a gyro and you had managed to get some of it on your leg. Not just your face and your shirt. You managed to get the sauce on the face, the hands, the shirt, and the leg. It was distracting me.
white sauce everywhere.
Yes. It was impressive that you managed to do that by accident. That level of carelessness when eating takes a truly neglectful person. I don't think you're born with that kind of self-neglect. I think you cultivate it.
Yeah, I have
And
cultivated
I think
it.
you've zeroed in on it over the years.
41
And
years.
Way to go, dude. That's impressive. Big ups, dude. Me and Dylan are fist bumping right now.
Since this is an audio medium.
Yes, we got to tell the audience what we're doing, don't we?
Yes.
Okay. All right, let's get on with it. I am excited. Thanks for having me, Dylan.
Thanks for coming on.
You're welcome, dude. It was my
Thanks for
pleasure.
coming to town so we could do this.
I'll look for any reason I can to come to Salt Lake City. Yeah.
Oh,
All right, let's get on with it.
We certainly do miss you.
Uh-huh.
So I just described you in a comedian in my intro. How would you describe yourself?
Oh, Jesus. That's wow. How would I describe myself?
Yeah.
What are we talking, physically?
However you, professionally, personally, physically, however you want to describe yourself.
Okay, I would say physically, average height, blue eyes, fair skin, blonde hair. Sometimes people say I have strawberry blonde or red hair.
Not in this light.
Is it blonde?
It's blonde.
Okay, I'm happy to hear that. Good. I could afford to lose about 20 pounds. I have what I think is a bad voice. I think I have a old lady voice. Pear-shaped. Let's see, how else should I continue describing myself physically? You know, the lines from my act, bully from a 1990s Disney movie, things like that. Very buttercream gang.
Buttercream gang.
Very Mormon looking. Okay. Personality-wise, I would say I'm likable. I can be kind of rude sometimes. I have a very short attention span. I'm not a good listener. I am not good at remembering people's names, which makes me look like a bigger dick than I actually am.
I'm horrible with names.
Are you?
Yeah.
Oh, good. But the problem is I'm a very outgoing person who's bad with names. So I'm putting myself in all kinds of scenarios where I look like a dick. Because I'll approach somebody and say hi and strike up a conversation with them, and I've met this person 4 or 5 times, and I forgot about all of those instances. How else should I describe myself, personality-wise? I'm a procrastinator. I am an attention seeker. Let's see, I'm giving you a pretty honest assessment of myself. I'm pretty bright.
Yes. You're
Pretty bright guy.
very smart.
Thank you, Dylan. Appreciate that. We'll start there. I think those are some good jumping off points. I think if you're an adept podcast host, you'll be able to do something with that. Let's see it. Nope.
Okay.
That paints
Yeah.
that's a decent picture I painted of myself,
Yes.
given the amount of time. Okay.
Good looking, smart, charismatic.
I didn't say good looking, and I never said charismatic. Okay.
Well,
I did say likable, which is the same. Okay.
Well, that's a way to be good looking. You're better looking than me. I'll give you that much.
Dylan,
Yes.
don't open. How do I take that compliment without being a bastard to you? I guess I could just say thanks.
Yeah, just say thanks.
I'm getting better at that. I'm getting better at not being rude. I'm getting better at being kind, I think. Yes. I'm an emotional person. I'm a reactionary emotional drug addict. Okay, which kind of that kind of cancels out the part of me that's bright. I think I function on a much lower intelligence level than I actually am.
I could see how you perceive
because I
that.
have a short attention span and I operate on an emotional level a lot.
But when you focus, your intellect comes through. Because like some of your comedies, you know, some of those things you put in there are so specific, and you know the way you just craft the words.
Really?
I think there's intelligence there.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm not trying to be intelligent in my comedy. If it is intelligent, that's fine. But I'm only trying to be. I'm never interested in showing anybody how smart I am. But if people watch it and they're like, "Oh, he's smart," that's great. But do you ever watch those comedians where it's clear that it's very important to them that they look and sound intelligent?
Yeah.
Isn't that annoying?
Like when they're writing, they're referring to, you know, books, and it's like
Obscure
yeah.
references, just this, the tone is very pretentious and uppity. Am I making sense?
Yeah.
Okay, they might be comics who we probably agree with politically a lot. You know, comics who in their act, I can tell I probably vote the same way as this person, but he's not making me laugh at all.
Yeah.
Okay. Doing a good job of making good points and shedding light on issues, and I'll find myself sitting there nodding in agreement and saying, "Yeah, I hear you," and not laughing once.
Yeah.
This is a really smart, thoughtful, correct person who is not making me laugh.
Yeah, like I can't think of any examples.
Well, we're not going to name
Yeah.
names. We're not going to go ahead and turn, you know, this sacred thing into a gossipy podcast. We know
Yeah.
that Your Creativity podcast is above that, don't we, Dylan?
We do.
Okay.
Now, the next question I usually ask is, how did you get to where you are today?
To where I am
Yes.
as just a human being?
Just more like the evolution of your comedy, you know, where you started.
Oh, so
And-
just the comedy itself?
Yeah.
Okay, I can answer that question. The biggest, probably the most significant realization I had early on in comedy was that my comedy didn't have any jokes. When I very first started, I was telling stories. Because when I was just like sitting around bantering with my friends, I was funny. I'm like, oh, well, that's all I have to do with stand-up. I didn't know a lot about stand-up when I first started doing it. I had only become a fan like 6 months prior.
Okay.
I had never been to a comedy club before I started doing comedy. I had never performed stand-up before my first... Well, obviously, I never performed stand-up before my first open mic, but I had never been to an open mic, right? So I was not comedy savvy at all. Like how jokes were constructed, things like that, premise, setup, punchline, things like that. The skill of being a stand-up comedian.
Right.
I wasn't even aware there was a skill set. Not only did I not have that skill set yet, I wasn't even aware there was a skill set. I thought it was just purely talent. I thought it was just a funny person going up there and being funny, and that was what stand-up was.
Right.
And that's what I tried to do, and I was bombing. And I couldn't really figure out why. And I thought about it, and I realized, you know, I'm not just hanging out with my friends bullshitting. I'm a performer. And when you're a performer, there's expectations put on you. When you're standing on a stage with a microphone and a light, and you have everyone's attention with the expectation of you're going to make them laugh, if a minute goes by and you haven't made them laugh, it's really unsettling and hurts your confidence. And suddenly it's not the same at all as just hanging out with your friends.
Right.
And I realized what I need are jokes. I need to get to something funny fast.
How many open mics did you do before you... did you go to before you went up?
Before I got like a guest set, let's see, I started open mics in May, and then I got on a real show in October. So not too long, but I would say something kind of clicked after like, you know, May, April, June, July, August. After like 5 months, I started kind of writing jokes, getting to the funny faster.
Right.
Wasn't trying to tell stories, but the jokes were still from my life, and in particular, the stuff about being a recovering heroin addict. I only had like 6 months clean when I started doing comedy, and I started writing jokes about being in recovery.
Right.
because that's what I was thinking about all of the time. I was thinking about two things: not using heroin and doing stand-up comedy. Okay? And once I started to kind of figure out how to write a joke and get to the funny, that's when I started, things started clicking a little bit, and I started getting laughs and getting better at it. Okay? Then I really zeroed in on writing jokes, and I noticed like dark stuff was working for me because I was writing about being a recovering heroin addict. And then a few months went by, and I was really influenced by Anthony Jeselnik and really started kind of copying his swagger a little bit and being too influenced by him, where I'll watch old tapes of myself, and it's this really shitty Anthony Jeselnik impression. The jokes are good, I think, and they're personal, but they're the cadence is very deliberate. It's a very obvious style that's influenced by Jeselnik, and obviously I needed to get away from that because there's already an Anthony Jeselnik. So then I just started being more mindful of not sounding like him, which is something that a lot of comics have struggled with, not being able to totally escape their influences. Especially starting out, your influences are going to shine through.
Right.
So I had to make a very mindful effort not to. I'm sorry, this is kind of a long answer.
No,
but we're just talking about my comedy and where it started and how it got to where it's at now.
Yeah.
And I just started making like a mindful, conscious effort not to sound like him, not to do that kind of cadence. And slowly but surely I was getting away from that. And then as I became more comfortable on stage and more confident in my abilities, I started riffing a little bit more, going up there with not just jokes written word for word, but ideas that were kind of jokey, and then riffing on it and writing it on stage and becoming better at engaging and performing and just kind of sounding like myself more than a character.
Right.
But then stayed with the joke writing. And that's what I've been cultivating now probably the last 3-4 years now, is writing an idea, turning it into a joke, then going up there with 4 or 5 of those, or sometimes even just one new one, telling it and riffing it out and being present and being in the moment. And now, after about 7 years, kind of getting to where I first started of just being myself and being a funny dude on stage, but now with the skill set that makes a comedian, not just the talent. The skill set of writing jokes, skill set of riffing, the skill set of knowing what the audience is into, what they like, what they don't like, and now having enough material to draw from to like, okay, they're not on board with this dark stuff, I can take it in a sillier direction.
Right, because
Yeah.
I go to the club here enough that I see some comedians do the same stuff every time, and depending on the crowd is how it lands.
Right, and eventually, and if they've been doing it a couple of years or something like that, you can't really hold that against them. I remember when I first started doing guest sets, I had 5 to 7 minutes of material, and it was all really dark stuff about recovery. And if I was 3 minutes into my set and I noticed the audience wasn't on board, all I could do was just power through and do my time.
Right.
And it wasn't until I had more years of comedy under my belt that I had a broader array of material, subject matter to draw from.
Yep. Those first few minutes, you figure out what kind of crowd it is, and then you base the rest of it on that.
And now exactly. I'll go up, and now here at Wise Guys, I was hosting a lot, and I would do stuff that was kind of a little safer. I would make jokes about where we were at the mall, stuff like that, and then maybe stuff about dating, kind of safer stuff that isn't going to be so jarring. You got to keep in mind, these are the first jokes the people are going to hear tonight.
Yeah.
I don't want to go up and tell some joke, make the first joke about my junkie friend who got AIDS. That's not the first joke they should be hearing that night. And it's already unsettling coming from a guy who looks like me, because I look safe.
Yeah.
And establishing comfort, I say, is the thing that I've really had to work on. There's some comics who are really good at establishing comfort and making the audience feel comfortable, and that's not naturally who I am. Who I am naturally is somebody who creates tension, which isn't necessarily what you want to be doing when you're hosting a show. You want to make people comfortable and establish that kind of tone for the show.
Right.
And if I were doing a longer set, like 12 minutes or something like that, then I could go a little bit more messed up if I felt like I had them, you know. And everything I'm saying right now, I should say I don't have comedy figured out yet. I'm still constantly baffled by it.
Do any comics really ever do?
Completely, like I would hope not, because that would kind of ruin the fun in it.
Yeah.
But certainly a comic who's been doing it 20 years has a much better handle on it than me, and has a much better sense of themselves than I do. But no, I imagine absolutely they still don't totally have it figured out. I was watching Seinfeld in an interview with Larry King a few years ago, and Larry King asked him, how do you know what's going to work? And he said, you don't really. You have an idea that you think is going to be funny, but you don't really know what's going to work until you go out and you try it in front of the audience.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When you're writing, what kind of situation is the most creative for you? Like sitting alone, or people watching at a coffee shop, or
I don't have any one situation where clearly I'm like, okay, that's the situation where I draw a comedy from. What I do is I try to take note of funny things that happen in my life and then write them on my phone. And then when I get some free time, I'll find the joke in that funny thing and actually sit down and write it. Or at least write down an idea that's worth riffing out on stage.
All right.
Okay? For instance, I just kind of am wrapping up like this new chunk about guys with ponytails. That's now, yeah. And it's now like, have you heard it?
No, I haven't heard it yet.
You haven't heard the pony? Well, I saw a guy with a braided ponytail and khaki shorts. Mm-hmm. I'm like, that guy's probably really good at catching snakes. And that was just the first thought I had. That's not really a joke, although it kind of can be.
Yeah.
And then I went and tried that out on stage and saw what worked, and went and just thought about other guys with ponytails. What else do we know about them? Or at least how do I perceive them?
Yeah.
And it's evolved into kind of like this little 4-minute chunk now. And it's not necessarily one of my strongest bits. In fact, sometimes it doesn't work as well as I want it to. But it works well enough to where it's become like a regular part of the act.
Right.
It's like part of the act now. And that's just an example of something that started out as an idea. I wrote it down, I tried it out, and then went home and just wrote jokes to it more. And it evolved into a thing. But sometimes I would say I take time all the time and write by myself, actually.
Okay.
Yeah. And I really love writing a joke by myself. One that sometimes is just an idea I wrote on a piece of paper, and then I went and just wrote it, and it was just 100% a thing I just thought up. I'm like, there we go, that's a joke. Because for me, it's nice to know I don't have to depend on funny things happening to me to generate material. That if I'm really in a slump, which I have been before, I've been in droughts, if I want to, I can kick myself in the ass and sit down and be like, okay, write some jokes, and I have that in my toolbox. Like, I can do that. So that's nice.
Now, you mentioned Jeselnik as an influence early on.
Did you just call him Jeselnik?
Anthony Jeselnik.
Jeselnik? That sounds like a genie or something.
Jezebelnik.
Yeah. Oh, Dylan. Okay, go on with the question.
All right. Who else influences?
Oh man, well, like so many comics were just starting out. Mitch Hedberg. Like for the first few weeks, I was one of 1,000 open mic comics who was doing a Mitch Hedberg impression. Mine was especially bad though, because as I said, I was telling stories with a Mitch Hedberg cadence. It was atrocious. It's like, I work at my dad's garden center. I'm a 3rd-generation garden center worker. Like, no jokes in a Mitch Hedberg voice. So like, this guy's clearly hacking Mitch Hedberg, and he's not even doing jokes. Like, this is double shitty. But which comics influence me now?
Yeah, just who generally inspires you?
Oh, I really like jokey guys quite a lot. I love Dave Attell so much. He makes me laugh so much. Of course, you know, the typical answers, guys like Patton Oswalt and Louis C.K. and Bill Burr. And then some weirder comics like Maria Bamford, I'm a big fan of. I really make an effort not to let them influence me too much and just be a fan and watch them and enjoy. And sometimes it's hard. Patrice O'Neill is a personal favorite. He's another one I really like. He's a comic who probably makes me... I disagree with 99% of what he said, but he was hilarious.
When he came to the club years ago, were you on the scene then, and did you see that show?
Yes, I was on the scene, but I was not at the show.
Okay.
Which, if I knew he was going to die, I would have gone.
Yeah.
But I didn't know. I think I was in Ogden that weekend or something, so I didn't make it. I just didn't know he was going to die. Otherwise, I would have gone.
Well, do we ever know, really?
What?
Do we ever know? Well, I guess terminally ill people know, but in general, you'd never know when you're going to go.
That's a very astute observation, Dylan.
Well, I recently had a longtime client die. He went to the Trump inauguration. He was a big Trump person. And he went out to the inauguration, and when he was out there, he got sick. He got pneumonia and became septic. And he was in the ICU out there in Virginia for like 3 or 4 weeks. And then he got moved here. So I'm like, oh, he got moved, so he must be improving. And then about a week later after that, I get a message that he passed away.
Was he a friend of yours?
I've worked with him off and on probably the past 8 years.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry to hear that.
He owned a splash pad company.
He owned a splash bed company.
Splash pad, where, you know, in parks you'll see like...
Oh, sure. Yeah, the water slides.
They're not slides. They're like cement things with sprinklers coming out.
Okay.
I explained that horribly. But
Well,
anyway.
you sounded like a hell of a guy. The world is surely a worse place
He had
without
a strong
him.
personality, and when I went to his funeral, it just hit me a lot harder than I was expecting.
Okay.
So,
It is true. Sometimes people die and you don't know it. I'm sorry your friend died, Dylan. That's too bad, buddy.
I'm doing okay with it. It just caught me off guard. Now,
When my grandpa died, I knew it was coming. That's all.
okay, do you want to go into that?
He had cancer and he tried to beat it with juice. So it was easy to see Grandpa's going to die. He got diagnosed with colon cancer and he didn't trust the doctors or chemotherapy, so he just bought a juicer. It's like, yeah, Grandpa's going to die. And sure enough, he went. He died as fast as you possibly could from cancer. So that's an example of somebody dying and knowing it's coming. When somebody gets cancer and they try to beat it with juice, you can bet that person's probably going to die.
I think Steve Jobs handled his cancer in a similar way, since I don't think he really trusted, medicine and...
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't follow Steve Jobs' battle with cancer too much. I'll have to read up on that.
Yeah, they kept it pretty quiet.
I came unprepared to the podcast on that subject. I apologize.
Well, who knows that we were going to talk about Steve Jobs.
I know, but it's my bad. I dropped the ball on that one.
That's okay. Well,
prepare for
next time.
Let's keep it rolling. I'm having a good time.
Now, tonight's show, your main show is called Andy Gold's Big Wet Showcase.
That's right.
Where'd that name come from? Does that have
that came? You know the answer to that.
I know, but
this is not a real conversation we're having.
Our listener doesn't.
Okay. The name, our listener, I like how you didn't pluralize it. I do believe that you only have one listener. I'm sorry, dude. I just took a cheap jab. Is it really you? Are you the only person who listens to this podcast?
There's probably a few others.
Okay.
I don't know how many listeners offhand.
You don't?
No.
Well, keep it up, dude. It's only a matter of time before this podcast goes straight to the top.
Lands where it does.
Excellent. Well, I had a podcast with Sasha, who is your producer and was my producer, called the Big Wet Podcast. I just couldn't think of a name for the podcast, and Sasha was really kind of, hey, do you have a name yet? And I just texted him that. And I'm bringing the podcast back, as you know, with Sasha again. We didn't get along that well. Some of it was my fault. Some of it was his fault. But we're very cool right now.
And you have 2 states between you.
We have 2 states between us. That's what will make it easier. And Christian Piper, who has been really helpful in like putting together the pieces for this festival, just named the showcase the Big Wet Showcase.
Right.
And that's tomorrow night. Tonight I'm hosting for TJ Miller.
Very nice.
Yeah, it should be sold out. I'm pretty pumped.
Have you met him before?
I think I've opened for him before. Yeah.
Okay.
He put a bit of mine on his podcast, actually.
Really?
Yeah. The one about my dad, the fisting one with my dad.
Oh.
Yeah. On I can't even remember what it was called, but I can't remember anything, the network or anything. Seth Tippett, who's your rival website guy, shared the link with me.
This has a lot better with the websites than I am. I do WordPress, but
Seth is better with websites than
Yes.
you. I agree.
Probably faster, too.
I'm sorry, Dylan. Okay.
No, it takes me a while with websites. WordPress gets funky sometimes.
Here's a question. What
Yes.
are you good at?
Pissing off my wife.
I think you're really good at being a fan of Star Wars.
I go back and forth between Star Wars and Star Trek. Depends on the quality.
I think you're really good at having some of the most confusing / disturbing profile pictures on Facebook.
What's an example of that?
The one with your face over the New York skyline saying "Honor 9/11." It was horrifying.
That was
Yes, it was. That was nightmare-inducing. The face of Dylan Mazziotti over the New York skyline, just smiling over the Twin Towers before their imminent destruction.
I must have forgotten about that. I should never forget, but I must have forgotten.
Oh, yeah. Was that a joke? Good job, buddy. What's another profile picture you have? Your new headshot where you're glaring at the camera very sternly saying you stand with refugees. That one made my skin crawl. What's another one? The one with you and the fedora.
Oh, I call that one the grumpy gangster.
The grumpy gangster?
Yeah.
Yeah, that one doesn't have a caption that's off-putting, but the picture itself is enough to make me cringe, I would say.
Well, I had a fedora. I'm chubby, and just the way we sat for it, I just grumpy gangster.
That's your defense of the photo, huh?
Yes.
Okay, good. But what I liked about it, the common denominator in all the photos that I really liked about it was just the sheer authenticity that is Dylan Mazziotti shining through.
I don't smile.
No, in the Honor 9/11 smile you
Oh.
did. You had a really, kind of smile of, I don't know, like the smile of a man who has kids in his crawl space. Kind of this half-cocked, really sadistic smile, but not knowing it's sadistic.
Right.
A smile of pleasure, but underneath some real evil.
I've no.
I don't think you're an evil guy, and I don't think you have kids under your crawl space. I'm just saying when you
Not in this new
smile,
house.
you look that way. Dude. Okay.
Yeah.
On to the next question, Dylan.
So Big Wet Podcast. What kind of stuff, shenanigans, and hullabaloo do you have on there?
Hullabaloo?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
I was trying to find a word that would go with shenanigans and
That's a good one. What kind of tomfoolery I have?
that was actually the
What
word I
kind
was
of
looking for.
enthusiastic corruption of the public good shall I have coming towards the Big Wet Podcast, sir?
Yes.
Okay. Well, first episode is just a reintroduction of the Big Wet Podcast, which I'm recording this Sunday back in the studio, which I think is fitting, before I head back to LA. And my very first guest is going to be a paleontologist.
Where did you meet this
I
paleontologist?
shot out an email to different LA paleontologists. His name's Andrew, and he works for a museum called ALF in LA.
What does the ALF stand for?
I forget.
Oh, okay.
But he's really excited about it. And I'm just going to ask him questions about dinosaur bones, who would win in a fight out of a dinosaur and Noah. Could a dinosaur fit on Noah's Ark? What is his favorite dinosaur bone? What if there were two animals banging? Okay. and the dust from the meteor froze them in time. Could we make a dinosaur from the fossilized dino cum? Could we do that? I'm not going to spoil it and, use up all of my good content on your creativity,
Right.
because we both know your creativity is already at the top. Okay, I don't need to, propel it any further into the stratosphere of success. So I'm not going to just waste all of my content. But do you get the idea?
I do get the idea.
And then I'm going to have not too many comics on the show. I don't want it to be another comic interviewing a comic show and just WTF it out. You know what I mean?
Right.
I'll have a paleontologist on there. I'm going to get like some weird palm reader type people on there. I want to get like a priest and an atheist and have them on there and have them WTF it out and have them have a conversation while I mediate it. Stuff like that. I'll get like a hardcore feminist leader of the LA community, talk to that person about what their life is like. Try to get people who are important / and or interesting. Yeah.
And in LA, there's a lot of people.
There's a lot of people like that in Utah too, though, man.
True.
There's just more people in LA.
Yeah.
I would say per capita, there's as many interesting people per capita in Salt Lake as there are in LA, which means there's a lot more uninteresting shit to sift through to get to the good stuff in LA.
Yeah, I haven't lived in LA or spent a lot of time in LA, but yeah,
Yep.
I can see where you're coming from.
Well, you do know that there's a lot of people, yeah?
Yes.
Okay,
It's
yeah.
one of the major cities of
Okay.
our United States of America.
That's very good, Dylan Mazziotti. All right, let's keep the ball rolling.
I was going to make a Trump joke there, but I backed out at the last moment.
You backed out of a Trump joke.
Yeah.
Hang on a second. Let me text this. Keith Stubbs just texted me. I'm next door, doing Dylan's podcast. Can you edit this out? I'm sorry.
Sasha, edit this out.
Okay. What room are we in right now?
The storage room in the back.
Of what? Of the big room?
The Moab room.
In the storage room in the back of the Moab room. Okay, cool. Or you can leave that in.
What?
That's a glimpse into the life of Andy.
Andy talking to Keith.
Okay.
There we go. We'll leave it in. So we were just talking about L.A.
Let's go. Let's do it.
So comedy scene-wise, L.A. versus Utah, Salt Lake, how do they differ? Are they...
Well, L.A. there's just more stage time. I guess it's quality versus quantity, really. With some good spots, like I've been able to get on some real shows here and there, like I'm doing a show up in Simi Valley on the 10th in front of real people. But it's a lot of like crappy mics and shows in front of a dozen stoned comics, where that material doesn't always work in front of real audiences here in Utah. And in Utah, I would get regular stage time at Wise Guys in front of real audiences, which is invaluable. So to be honest, I don't feel like I'm getting any better at comedy in LA. There's just more industry opportunities in LA. But I don't feel like it's where you go if you want to get better at comedy, to be honest with you. At least not at my level, because the shows I'm doing them more just to meet people than I am to get better.
All right.
Because it's very difficult, at least for me, to get anything valuable performing at 1 a.m. in front of 7 stoned comics who are looking at their phones. There's nothing. There's nothing.
Yeah, nothing to...
Some people would really disagree with me on that and say, no, you can. But that's how I feel. I would say there's more opportunity in LA, but unless you're at a very high level, you can actually build an act easier here in Salt Lake City than you can in LA.
Yeah, I was just curious about that.
At least for me. Yeah.
Now, you hear about shows out there that, some of the big names show up.
Yeah.
Have you experienced that any nights when you were at some clubs?
Yeah. Jerry Seinfeld popped in to a show in the Lab at the Improv the other night on my buddy Christian's show, which was surreal and exciting and awesome. The Lab is just this alty side room in the Improv that holds like 50 people. And there were like 12 people there. There were like 12 people, and Jerry Seinfeld goes up and does time. There weren't 12 people much long after that. Everybody
Yeah.
started to trickle in and it filled up. But that was bonkers. It was incredible and amazing. And he was great. He was so funny.
That just would be mind-blowing. It's just, you're hanging out there with...
Yeah, and
you know,
then it's like literally the biggest comedian alive. So, I mean, yeah, to answer your question, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. On to the next question. Cool.
We'll wrap it up here. So
Oh, dude, are we almost done? That was
we're almost
good.
done. We're
Okay.
at
I really enjoyed myself, man.
we're at 40 minutes. So for a one-on-one, that's actually really good. What's your favorite thing about doing comedy?
My very favorite thing about doing comedy?
Yes.
The high that comes after a good set. Or being on stage and getting the laughs, that feeling. Like, plain and simple. That's 100% why I do everything that I do. Like, having a great set and that feeling is the best feeling in the world to me. That's my favorite thing. It's indescribable. That's just charges me up, man. That's a simple, short answer, but that's it.
It feels like it completes you.
No, god damn, Dylan, gross. Ew, just no. Ugh, don't interpret it anyway, just listen to
Okay.
it. It feels like it completes me? Dylan.
Like...
Oh, God, edit that one out, Sasha. Ugh, completes me.
Like, this... It feels like this is where what you're meant to be doing, and...
No, not
Okay.
necessarily. I don't have any sort of feelings of destiny when I'm doing it. Like, I was made by God to do this. This is my destiny and my purpose. I just feel like it's something I'm good at. Not all the time. Some nights I'm really bad at it. Okay? But it is something that gives me a sense of purpose. I'll say that. That's probably the most profound meaning I can attach to it. I'm driven to do it. I'm compelled to do it, which is not a thing I've had in my life a lot. Something that I'm compelled to do and driven to do and motivated to do just because I really love doing it. And I get a sense of fulfillment from doing it. I get a
more what I
sense
was
of
getting at.
value from doing it. Accomplishment, achievement. A lot of great things come from progressing in stand-up. And it all stems from just getting those laughs on stage. It's more than just a high. It's that high, what it represents, and when I take that home with me and what it motivates me to do. And absolutely, it gives me a tremendous sense of purpose and happiness and motivation. So that's what I love most about stand-up.
Okay.
I think you were looking for some depth to the answer, so there you have it.
Yeah, that is
Okay.
the depth I was looking for.
There you go. Make sure you refer to the card again.
Yes,
Okay.
because as soon as I get the microphone in front of me, I forget things. Like earlier we talked about.
Well, it's a good thing
I
you decided
forget
to host a podcast then, Dylan.
I usually have a co-host or two that help out, and
I see. Okay.
it gets me a lot more relaxed because they can carry some of the weight.
I see. Okay. They can share. I gotcha.
Can share.
All right.
So where can everybody find you?
Oh, my social media
Your
plugs?
social media plug.
My Twitter is at Andy A. Gold.
What does the A stand for?
Austin. It's my middle name. Yeah.
Very nice.
And then you can find me on Facebook. Just Google Andy Gold Comedian Facebook. I'll pop up. Instagram is Andy Austin Gold. Snapchat is Andy A. Gold. And then I have a website, www.andygoldcomedy.com.
Who made that for you?
You did, sir.
I did?
Yeah, and I got to get you my dates so you can update that shitizzle.
Yes.
Okay. Did I swear too much on the podcast?
No.
Okay, cool.
Sasha took care of that last episode. I interviewed Sasha and Johnny last time.
Oh, cool.
And there was a lot of cussing in that one.
Oh, I like your accent. That's fun, huh?
That's my cussing voice.
Ah, I see. Well, thanks for having me, man.
Thanks for coming on.
My
Appreciate
pleasure.
it.
Cool.
Everybody, thanks for coming on, listening. You can listen to us on not Earhole Media. That's gone.
The Utah Stand-Up Network.
Utah
the
Podcast
Podcast Network.
Network.
Thank you very much, yes.
Or you can look us up on our social, Your Creativity across the board. But instead of the A, it's an 8.
Cool.
So,
Alrighty.
thank you, everybody, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Dylan.
Bye-bye.